officers, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here on this stage to discuss a few issues related to the Northeast, this geostrategic importance and the impact on the Northeast. I'll cover it in three parts. One part is the geostrategic importance itself, wherein I would cover 5 of the aspects. Then I'll talk to you about the impact that this geostrategic location creates for the Northeast. And in the end, I'll give you some suggestions as to how we can deal with this. Coming to the geostrategic importance, the first one is, this is the only part of India which has got boundaries with 5 countries. That gives it the unique kind of location and the unique kind of problems that this region faces. The second is the Siliguri corridor, which is a small little 22-23 kilometer gap through which most of your essential infrastructure flows through the Northeast. That is the second aspect. The third aspect is it provides connectivity towards further east. When you say look east, when you say act east, if you don't connect the main part of India, which includes the Northeast, towards the eastern part of it, it's a no-go. Fourth thing is, it talks about a lot of resources. Oil, tea, coal, uranium, forest resources, hydropower, name a thing, this area is very rich as far as these resources are concerned. And the last aspect, the fifth aspect of the strategic issue is, it induces movement of population, which has been talked about earlier. It may be illegal immigration, you may call it anything, but it makes the population move in this region. So what is the impact that these 5 issues create on the northeastern area? One is, it lends itself to insurgencies. You look at prerequisite of any insurgency in the world, you need a boundary with a neighboring country. That prerequisite is met in the northeastern region. Second thing is, it brings external players to come and do something within this region, which implies all these 5 countries which are bordering will have some influence or the other within this region. Take for example, Bangladesh is one which has been discussed. Take for example, even from Myanmar, people come and work in ISA. So the issue is, it brings in all these 5 countries to have some kind of influence in the Northeast. The third thing is, like the Dolam issue, the China factor. Out of this 5 countries which are having border, out with 3 or with 4 of them other than with 3 of them other than India, China has got a border with. So China is the elephant in the room. It has got its own influences which are acting in this region. The vulnerability of the Siliguri corridor, the chairman has already pointed out. Lack of understanding of Northeast amongst polity, civilians, and to some extent even in the uniformed community. Many of them won't have been even posted on the other side. So the perception of the Northeast varies. It comes from the fact that if we group the entire Northeast as one and say it's the Northeastern region, we are probably making a little mistake there. Each of the states have got a different dynamic, and within each state the dynamics are different. So we need to understand these dynamics which work in each state, and we'll have to interact accordingly. The alternate route to Northeast, which was discussed in the first session also, the Kaladan project and other projects that were discussed, this is something that actually works in the mind of all the planners as to how to deal with this particular region should Siliguri corridor come under some kind of threat. So this is always working in the mind of strategists, planners, etc. The other impact that it gives us, this region gives us, because of this location that it has, is the FICM, that is the fake Indian currency, weapon smuggling, narcotic smuggling, all these things that happen. It's an easy conduit for people to move these things in this area. Immigration takes place because the population which is looking at India as a prosperous country want India to share that prosperity with others in the neighborhood. So that is the next aspect which creates this issue of the impact that the other countries create in this region. Lastly, it also creates an environment for movements like LWE and ISI, etc., to come into this region and create a little mischief out there. When I talked about the other countries that are having, please understand, the other countries do give the groups, etc., which are operating in this region at some kind of sanctuary in terms of camps or otherwise. Like in terms of Nepal, you would have seen a lot of people getting arrested from Nepal, like Myanmar. So these are and Bangladesh. So these are the countries, and in 2004 you would have realized in the southern part of Bhutan the insurgent groups had moved. We had to do Operation Clear. So all these countries, because of the location that it has got this issue with them. So now third part, how to deal with this. Firstly, we need to devise a state-centric long-term plan for each of these states. Not in our domain, maybe in the government's domain. But when we do that, we also need to take the state governments on board on these issues. Basically, because what happens is, there are a number of issues between center, state, armed forces, etc., which need to be synchronized, which doesn't generally happen in many cases. The third thing is, we need to strengthen the law and order machinery, which is a very well and easily said thing, but it's a very difficult thing to do on ground. Fourthly, we should stop looking at the groups splitting themselves. The reason is the more number of groups you have in the Northeast, the more difficult it becomes to handle with them, each one of them. Manipur is a typical case wherein the number of groups that are operating there are too many, and it will be difficult to handle them to come to some kind of a conclusion. Development of infrastructure, it does not need to be said, but again, the point which was brought out in the first session, even the railway line which goes from Silchar to say Tupul and beyond, it is overdue, long overdue I would say. The highways have not come up. So the infrastructure needs to come up, and for that the security situation needs to improve in any case. We have known that these groups operating along that railway line getting into deals with the construction companies elsewhere outside the region. So all these issues happen there. We need to resolve the disputes with neighbors, which is again discussed in the first session. More than that, there is a tendency to believe that India being so big, so prosperous economically, will mean harm to the neighbors is some feeling that generally is felt around. That needs to be reassured to say that we have no kind of ill feelings or no kind of hegemonic tendencies with us. The ceasefire and suspension of operations with which many groups are there in the Northeast, that has to be taken to a logical conclusion. There are some groups which have come into suspension of operations in 2008, and the end result is not seen anywhere nearby. So you will find for 10 years, if these people have to remain in camps and sustain themselves, that is going to become an issue by itself. We need to strengthen the ISR capability. The chief is here, I don't have to speak more on this. And we need to deliver on promises, which Ambassador Sikri spoke about in the morning. None of the promises that we make to the neighboring countries are fulfilled in time. It takes a pretty long time, even for small things to happen. That somehow we need to overcome this particular thing. On the Siliguri corridor, I am sure the operational plans exist. I am not going to talk about them. We need to protect as well as defend whenever it is required. But two more things that we need to look at Siliguri corridor. One is the land along the Siliguri corridor, who does it belong to is something we need to take note of. Preferably that should be held by the government or the government establishments. The second thing is, in this region, what is the influence of funding, etc., on the monasteries that are along the border? These two things we need to keep monitoring and keep looking into in great amount of detail. The industrial development of Northeast. In the morning, people spoke about countries coming in to invest into Manipur, etc. What we need to look at is two more things. One is, can Indian industry be moved to do something in those regions? That is number one. Number two, the potential of Northeast has to be increased. How do we do that? You find, you drive along those roads, you find a number of canning factories, etc., which have been opened some time back, which could have easily flourished or remaining closed. Can we reactivate them? Can we reactivate the potential of the people in the Northeast? That is something that we need to look at. Otherwise, what would happen? Northeast will become a conduit for stuff to go across, and they'll be left out other than doing the normal work that is required to be done. Northeast needs to be developed. And lastly, The multiplicity of agencies is what was talked about in the morning. We need to seriously do something about it. The agencies that deal with the Northeast need to be like Bangladesh's borders being looked at by BSF, Nepal and Bhutan being looked at by SSB, somewhere ITBP is there, somewhere Army is there. Let us bring in some kind of synchronized kind of effort into this. With that, I'll finish here, and if there are any questions, I'll take it later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will not summarize what you said. It was very credible, very crisp. May I request